Hello everyone, welcome back into another Genshin Impact video. Today we'll have a look at Kamisato Ayaka, how to use her talents, abilities, best weapons, best artifacts, and some team ideas to use her as best as possible. So let's get started. First of all, we need to talk about her weapon choices, and of course the best one is the Misplitter Reforged. This is an amazing weapon because it has a lot of attack, gives crit damage as a substat, and at Refinement 1 it has a passive that gives up to 40% elemental damage, because 12% it's already there, you always have this active, but you can get up to 28% whenever you use your normal attacks and they deal elemental damage, you cast your elemental burst, and your energy is less than 100%. This is her best in slot weapon, but there are a lot more that are also very powerful and are easier to acquire in the game. Another 5-star option is the Skyward Blade. This is for those that want to use Ayaka only for her burst and with the Emblem of Severed Fate artifact set. The other good 5-star options that you can use if you have them, but they are not recommended, are the Primordial Jet Cutter and the Haran Geppaku. These two weapons are not that useful on her cause they give a lot of critical rate, but their passives are both amazing cause they give Ayaka a lot of attack with the Primordial Jet Cutter and a lot of elemental damage and normal attack damage with the Haran. And moving on to the 4-star weapons, we have very few options, I'd say. My recommendations are probably the Black Sword that has lots of attack and crit rate as a substat. Also increases your normal and charged attack damage by 25% and will regenerate some health whenever you crit every 5 seconds. Just remember to not go over 100% crit rate if you're also using Blitz Destroyer and Cryo Resonance. Then we have the Flute, which is another stat stick weapon, gives lots of attack, and the passive also deals a little bit of damage once in a while, nothing crazy. As for free-to-play options, we have the Prototype Rancor, which is an amazing weapon just for being a great stat stick, because it gives lots of base attack, and also increases your attack and defense whenever you hit an enemy with normal or charged attacks. And the other craftable option is the Amenoma Kageuchi, which looks very cool on Ayaka, so it's great for fashion. Also gives you a lot of attack, and the passive will help you with your energy problems, especially if you don't have a lot of energy recharge, whenever you're just playing the game using your elemental skill and your elemental burst. And the last weapon I wanna talk about is the Blackcliff Sword. You can buy this weapon from the shop, it costs 24 Masterless Star Glitter, and it's a great weapon because it gives you lots of attack and also a lot of crit damage as a substat, and as a passive that will increase your attack whenever you kill an enemy up to 3 times for 30 seconds. So it's not a great weapon against bosses, but in Abyss it's usually a great option since you'll have to fight a lot of enemies. Okay, let's move on to artifacts now. Of course, the primary choice and probably the best set for her is the Blitz Destroyer. This is for those that want lots of crit rate, up to 40% crit rate just from your artifact set. That way you can focus on your crit damage, your attack, and some energy recharge. Keep in mind though that sometimes you can only have 20% crit rate since some enemies cannot be frozen, like bosses or Electro Slimes. Other variations could be 2-piece Blitz Destroyer and 2-piece Gladiator, or any other set that has the 80% more damage on the 2-piece set, like Eagles of an Offering, Vermilion Hereafter, and Shimenawa's Reminiscence. Or you can use the Noblesse Obliged that will give you 20% more elemental burst damage, and the 2-piece Blitz Destroyer for that 15% more cryo damage. Or if you're using the Skyward Blade that gives you a lot of energy recharge, you can use the Emblem of Severed Fate that will also increase your energy recharge by 20%, and the 4-piece set will increase your burst damage up to 75% based on 25% of your energy recharge, which is amazing if you're focusing on Ayaka's burst. And if you wanna summon for Constellations as well, the only one that it's less useful is the first one, the other ones are great. The first Constellations will give you a chance of reducing your elemental skill cooldown, and this is probably the worst Constellation. Basically it doesn't add that much, and it's also a chance of proccing. If you're not going for Constellation 2 or further, I suggest you stick with C0. I've been using C0 Ayaka for a couple of days now, and I can say that she's amazing, even at C0. Then we have her Constellation 2 that will add these two smaller vortexes that will deal damage on the sides of your big vortex that is your burst. So whenever you use your burst, you will also unleash these two smaller vortexes, and this will add a lot of damage to your burst because it's yes 20%, but the burst is completely insane and it scales very well. So this 20% is more than you think actually. Constellation 3 will increase your burst level by 3. Constellation 4 is probably the best constellation, since it will decrease enemy defenses by 30% for 6 seconds whenever they are damaged by your burst. That means it will deal a lot more damage. Constellation 5 will give you 3 levels on your elemental skill. Constellation 6 will give you 298 more charge attack damage once every 10 seconds. And this will just buff your damage in general, but it's not something that I would consider too much. But I mean, it's more damage, so it's not bad at all. Alright, time to talk about talents, and let's start with the normal and charge attacks. And this is how they look. It's a 5-hit combo that has multiple strikes on the fourth attack, which is this one. It will hit 3 times, and then has a dash at the end. And that way you can just close the gap between you and the enemy very quickly. Oh, hello. You're new. Okay, Radiant Spin Squeeze. Anyway, then we have her charge attacks that will hit the enemies 3 times. And yes, enemies, because the AoE on her charge attacks is actually pretty good and will hit lots of enemies and can also hit things in like Venti's Vortex. So if they are a little bit up in the air, you can also hit them. Then we have her elemental skill, which is a very straightforward skill. You just tap it and it will release this AoE cryo damage that has a center on you and quite big radius around. Just remember to include her elemental skill in her rotation, since with this talent it will give you 30% more normal and charge attack damage for 6 seconds. Also helps in her rotation, since her burst has a cooldown of 20 seconds, and in those 20 seconds you can of course swap between your teammates, but also use your normal attacks and charge attacks, and refresh your E. That will also increase your normal and charge attacks. And talking about her burst, this is an amazing ability and probably one of the most damaging bursts in the game. And how it works, it's basically very simple. You will throw out this vortex that will continuously go forward unless it hits something, like the wall in this case, and then explode at the end. It will hit the enemies 19 times, and that 19 times is multiplied by this percentage over here, which is the cutting damage, and the explosion is the bloom damage, 286% at level 9. It lasts 5 seconds, and the energy cost is very high, being at 80 energy. You may notice that Ayaka has also the alternate sprint that, for example, Mona has, and this sprint actually is probably one of her downside, because it's not possible to redirect it. For example, if I go here, I use it, and then when I go left, it doesn't go left super quickly. It takes a second. But it is actually a very important part of our kit, since it will infuse our sword with Cryo. As you can see, it's glowing white for 5 seconds whenever you use it, and that's why you have to include it in your rotations. And it also bothers me that, for example, when you're exploring and you are running around with your dash, then you want to get some wood, for example. Yeah, it doesn't hit if the sword is infused with Cryo. Now that it's not infused anymore, I can actually hit the tree and get the wood back. And that also applies for like bushes, ores, and everything like that. So it's a little bit annoying. I hope they fix this. Another thing that your alternate sprint will do is whenever you exit and you manage to apply Cryo to an enemy or multiple enemies, it will restore 10 stamina and give you 18% more cryo damage bonus for 10 seconds. And that is actually amazing. It's lots more damage and also restores stamina, so you can spam more charge attacks. Then her signature passive talent is basically whenever you are crafting weapon and essential materials, she will give you 10% chance of doubling the product, which I think is not amazing, but it's still more resources once in a while. Let's now see how her abilities are being used in a real scenario, in this case second half, since it's 2 big enemies, and it's where her elemental burst will shine more. I'm also going to use a phrase team. You don't have to use this character specifically, just using this characters because Shunhe will buff my damage, Kazuha will also buff my damage, and Kogumi will also increase my damage since she's using the 3 intakes of Dragon Slayers.
Nice.
And here we are in second half, and let's see how her abilities work. So, first of all, I'm going to wait for both enemies to come to me, and apply Cryo with my E. That way they are now infused with Cryo. Then swap to Shunhe, use my Elenda's heal and burst, do the same with Kazuha, and then I'm going to freeze them with Kokomi's E, and use my burst. And that's how much damage is capable of doing. Yes, I suggest you use a phrase team, and this has many variations. You can swap Shunhe if you don't have her, you can use any cryo unit, but Eula. You can use Rosaria to get some more Cryo applications, and Keia has the same purpose. You can use Chongyun to get more Cryo on your normal attacks and charge attacks, even when you're not dashing around. You can even use Chi-Chi, because she's a great healer. You can also use Diona to reduce the stamina consumption thanks to her shield, and also gets a lot of elemental mastery and a lot of healing with her burst. You can swap Kazuha for Venti or Jean if you want an Anemo healer. You can use even the Anemo Traveler if you build her or him. You can even use Sayu for the same purpose as Jean. She's a great healer and also will debuff enemies thanks to Verdescent Vernier. And you can also use Sucrose, which is another great character that can swirl enemies, group them up, and also increase your elemental mastery. And finally, your Hydro unit is just whatever. You can use Mona, since she also has a lot of Hydro application. You can use Shincho, because his burst is amazing. You can even use Barbara, but you have to get close to the enemies. And if you have him, you can also use Ayato, since his burst can apply a lot of Hydro to the enemies very consistently. Another type of team you can use is a full Cryo team, where you use 3 Cryo units and an Anemo support to reduce the enemy Cryo resistance. This is more effective against bosses or enemies that cannot be frozen. And the other team I want to mention is a reverse melt team, where Kamisato Ayaka will melt the pyro applications of Xiangling and Bennett, but this is a team I don't recommend too much because it uses Xiangling and Bennett that are 2 amazing units you can use, for example, in the other half of Abyss. So I suggest you stick with the Freeze team or the Mono Cryo team. Alright, let's have some showcase time against bosses.
If it's a problem, I'll go to the bar and I shut it down. Get out my section, don't bother with lames. I'm watching these bunnies bounce. Shorty your 10, a rubber band, come on for the 100 pound. All of this talk, but don't run them mouth. I'm trying to be out. All I really wanna know, when we leaving. All I really need to know is when we leaving. All I really wanna know, when we leaving. All I really need to know is when we leaving. Let's go. This money we partying. Pick it up.
Into pieces I fall. When I collect myself, you better run like hell. Stuck in the flames of my soul. And when I'm out of my cell, you better pray for help. Welcome to my evolution.
Alright, that concludes our guide on this amazing character. I wish you a lot of luck for your summon session, and if you already have Ayaka, I guess you're having a lot of fun. I hope you learned something new and your Ayaka is using the best weapons and artifacts you have. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
we froze. Cold night in the winter, how it goes. Sorry that I fall away sometimes. Sorry that I fall away sometimes. Yeah, yeah. The end, got to end it all on the weekend. Sorry that I feel that way sometimes. Sorry that I feel that way sometimes. Oh.